Hello friends, and welcome to the Forgotten Past. On this channel, you'll explore untold stories, lost events, ancient discoveries, and hidden secrets from across history. Let's view the video. In the summer of 1914, Europe was plunged into the deadliest conflict the world had ever seen, the Great War. Nations mobilized millions of soldiers, unleashing an unprecedented scale of destruction. Among these men were those whose fate would become one of history's greatest mysteries. The First World War shattered illusions of glory. Rapid-fire machine guns, barbed wire, and relentless artillery turned battlefields into wastelands. Brave volunteers, convinced of a short war, soon found themselves enduring unimaginable horror in muddy trenches stretching across Europe. The war had no clear end in sight. The Western Front, with its endless trenches and shell-cratered landscapes, defined much of the war. But beyond France and Belgium, other fronts bled too. One such theater was Gallipoli, a brutal campaign where thousands of young men were sent to fight and die on unfamiliar shores. New Zealand, Australia, and countless parts of the British Empire answered the call to arms. From quiet villages to sprawling cities, men rushed to enlist. Among them were soldiers of the Royal Norfolk Regiment, destined for a journey that would lead them into the heart of a baffling wartime riddle. The Royal Norfolk Regiment had a long and proud history. Drawn from Norfolk County, its ranks included farmers, laborers, and even royal estate workers. Their dedication to king and country was unquestioned as they trained for battle. Unaware that their fate would echo through the decades, Gallipoli was chosen to strike at the Ottoman Empire and break the deadlock of the Western Front. But the plan would prove disastrous. Poor leadership, harsh terrain, and fierce resistance doomed the campaign. For the men of the Norfolk Regiment, Gallipoli would be their final destination, and their disappearance site. Amongst the chaos of global warfare, the story of a missing battalion would emerge. On the battlefields of Gallipoli, a group of brave men would simply vanish, leaving behind questions, myths, and a mystery that has defied explanation for over a century. The Vanishing Battalion's legend had begun. Among the ranks of the Royal Norfolk Regiment was a unique group known as the Sandringham Company. These men were not ordinary soldiers. Many were workers from King George V's private Sandringham estate in Norfolk, deeply loyal to both their country and their monarch. The Sandringham estate, sprawling across the Norfolk countryside, was more than a royal residence. It was a working estate with farms, gardens, and workshops. When war broke out, many of its employees, from gardeners to gamekeepers, volunteered together to form a company within the Norfolk Regiment. The Sandringham Company became part of the 5th Battalion of the Royal Norfolk Regiment. It consisted largely of countrymen, estate workers, and villagers familiar with hardship and hard work. Their shared backgrounds created tight bonds, strengthening their sense of duty and loyalty to one another. Many believed their royal connection gave them added prestige. Serving in a unit tied to the king himself carried pride and responsibility. Locals cheered them on as they trained, and newspapers celebrated the king's men marching off to war, confident of their courage and success. In the harsh realities of war, however, prestige offered little protection. After initial training, the Sandringham Company and their regiment were deployed to Gallipoli in 1915. They were part of the British effort to break the Ottoman lines and open a new front in the conflict. Gallipoli greeted them with scorching heat, disease, and relentless enemy fire. The cliffs, gullies, and barren hills provided little shelter. The Sandringham men, though hardened by estate life, faced horrors they could never have imagined as the campaign quickly descended into a bloody stalemate. Despite the hardships, the Sandringham Company marched forward with determination. Their destiny, however, would soon take a strange turn. Amidst the chaos of Gallipoli, this proud company, formed in the tranquility of Norfolk, would vanish into history, becoming the heart of one of WW1’s enduring mysteries. Gallipoli was meant to be a bold strike to knock the Ottoman Empire out of the war. Instead, it became a blood-soaked nightmare. The Allied landings on the Gallipoli Peninsula in 1915 were met with fierce resistance and impossible terrain that defied military planning. The jagged cliffs and rocky ridges offered the defending Ottoman troops a near-invincible advantage. Allied soldiers, including the British, Australians, New Zealanders, and French, struggled to gain ground under constant gunfire. The beaches became slaughter zones, and the campaign descended into brutal trench warfare. The initial landings at Cape Helles and Anzac Cove were disastrous. Poor maps, outdated intelligence, and underestimating the enemy resulted in chaos. Waves of Allied troops were pinned down, unable to advance. Thousands fell within hours, and the dream of a swift victory evaporated. Life in the trenches of Gallipoli was a living hell. Sweltering heat by day, freezing nights, and relentless flies tormented the men. Rotting corpses lay between lines, disease spread rapidly, and fresh water was scarce. Every step was shadowed by death or suffering. The Ottoman defenders, under commanders like Mustafa Kemal, proved tenacious and highly skilled. The Allies underestimated their resolve. Day after day, attacks faltered, and the front lines barely moved. Morale plummeted as young soldiers realized they were trapped in a grinding, hopeless campaign. For the Sandringham Company and the Norfolk Regiment, Gallipoli was a trial by fire. They were ordered to push inland, enduring shellfire, snipers, and suffocating heat. With every battle, their numbers thinned, yet they pressed forward toward the ominous ridges of Anafarta. It was at Anafarta, amidst swirling dust and deadly confusion, that the mystery unfolded. The battlefield's brutal conditions and chaotic combat masked what was to come. In the days ahead, the Norfolk Regiment would march into history, and into one of World War I's most enduring enigmas. On August 12, 1915, the Royal Norfolk Regiment, including the Sandringham Company, received orders to advance. Their objective was Anafarta Ridge, a vital high ground fiercely defended by Ottoman forces. The men prepared for battle, unaware they were about to vanish into the fog of history. The advance began under punishing conditions. The sun blazed overhead, turning the battlefield into a furnace. Dust clouds and smoke from artillery fire choked the air. Despite this, the Norfolk men moved forward with determination, navigating gullies, ridges, and the treacherous terrain of Gallipoli. Eyewitnesses described the scene as surreal. Some accounts claim a strange, low-lying mist drifted over the battlefield, enveloping the advancing battalion. Others reported intense gunfire and confusion as the Norfolks pressed ahead, disappearing beyond sight, into the dense scrub and smoke. By evening, it became clear something was terribly wrong. The Norfolk Regiment failed to return, and no communication came from their position. Search parties were sent, but found no trace, no wounded, no dead, no equipment, only silence where an entire company had vanished. The initial explanation was simple: they had been killed in action, their bodies lost in the rugged terrain. But doubts quickly arose. Even in the chaos of Gallipoli, entire units did not simply disappear without leaving behind bodies or evidence of their fate. Rumors began to swirl. Some spoke of an ambush, others whispered of mass capture by Ottoman forces. The most outlandish tales hinted at supernatural events, strange clouds, unknown forces, but facts were scarce. The Sandringham Company had seemingly evaporated into thin air. The fate of the vanished battalion would remain a mystery, haunting the families of Norfolk and puzzling historians for generations. With no clear answers, the disappearance became one of the most chilling unsolved puzzles of the First World War. Their story was far from over. In the wake of the battalion's disappearance, theories began to multiply. The most accepted explanation was that the Norfolk men had been ambushed by Ottoman troops. The rough terrain, combined with heavy fire, could have scattered and buried them, concealing their fate. Some survivors claimed the Norfolks advanced too far and became isolated. Cut off from support, they may have been overwhelmed, their bodies left in hard-to-reach gullies or caves. Gallipoli's rugged landscape was notorious for hiding the fallen, making recovery efforts nearly impossible. A more troubling theory suggested a cover-up by British commanders. The disastrous Gallipoli campaign was already controversial. Concealing the truth about a vanished battalion, some argued, may have been politically convenient, avoiding further public outrage or scrutiny back home. Adding to the intrigue were accounts of a mysterious cloud enveloping the battlefield. Several New Zealand soldiers later testified to seeing a strange, cigar-shaped mist hovering over the area as the Norfolks advanced, disappearing into it, never to be seen again. These supernatural claims fueled speculation for decades. Some suggested the soldiers were taken by unknown forces, abducted, vanished beyond human understanding. Though dismissed by most historians, these eerie stories captured the public imagination and ensured the mystery endured. Modern researchers and archaeologists have scoured the Gallipoli battlefield. In 1919, some remains believed to be from the Norfolk Regiment were discovered. But identification was incomplete. The evidence failed to provide definitive answers, leaving questions lingering like ghosts over the ridges. Despite advances in forensic science and historical investigation, the truth remains elusive. Was it enemy fire, hidden terrain, or something more mysterious? The disappearance of the Sandringham Company continues to perplex experts, a riddle etched into the tragic legacy of World War I. The disappearance of the Sandringham Company left a deep scar on Norfolk and the families they left behind. For decades, loved ones clung to hope, desperate for news. But the battlefield silence offered no comfort, only endless questions and quiet heartbreak. In Norfolk, the mystery became folklore. The Vanishing Battalion entered local legend, retold in hushed tones by generations. The King's connection to the Sandringham men only deepened public fascination. Their fate symbolized the senseless losses endured by thousands during the Great War. Writers, filmmakers, and historians were drawn to the story. Documentaries speculated about supernatural forces, cover-ups, and military blunders. The enigma of the missing battalion captured imaginations worldwide, ensuring their tale was never forgotten despite the lack of definitive answers. The military, too, learned hard lessons. Gallipoli's failures highlighted the dangers of poor planning and communication. The loss of the Norfolk men fueled debate about leadership accountability and the harsh realities of modern warfare, reshaping how future campaigns were prepared and fought. In the years following, archaeologists and historians have continued their search for evidence. Some human remains were recovered, but identification proved difficult. Artifacts, bones, and battlefield relics offered fragments of truth, but the complete picture remains frustratingly incomplete. The mystery of the vanished battalion endures as a symbol of war's chaos. In every conflict, there are stories lost. Soldiers unaccounted for, and families left wondering. The Sandringham Company's fate reflects the countless unknown tragedies buried beneath history's grand narratives. To this day, memorials and ceremonies honor the missing men. Their story, part myth, part fact, lives on. The Vanishing Battalion reminds us that amid war's brutality, some questions defy explanation, and the past still whispers through the echoes of forgotten battlefields. Thanks for watching The Forgotten Past. If you enjoyed the journey, like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a hidden story or untold truth. New discoveries await. See you in the next video.